Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by resolution number 269-2013, setting the 2014 meeting dates, sending a copy to the record and the Jewish Standard, filing a copy of the Township Clerk's Office, and posting it on the Municipal Building Bulletin Board, and the Mayor hereby directs that this statement be included in the minutes.
Great. Thank you. Welcome to tonight's budget discussion. Is there a reason why you don't have good welfare on the agenda? It's not on this, but that's why I'm asking. Is do you put it out to the public?
I'll make an agenda motion, Mayor, and include good welfare in the right spot.
Thanks. First item on tonight's agenda is good welfare. This is where any person can speak on any matter that they would like to in the town. Mr. Rose?
Good evening, Howard Rose, resident. Tonight we all have a common goal, optimizing Teaneck within the limits of fiscal responsibility. I've got a long list. I hope that you will take notes and respond to each point. I'm wondering why council meetings, especially council budget meetings, among the most important council meetings, are still not streamed live. The budget is a complicated document that is being presented here in detail. No resident, excuse me, I'm not used to working with a computer, you probably all know that already. No resident has committed it to memory. It would be helpful if the overhead screen were used to allow residents the courtesy of viewing the details and better understanding the discussion. Let's get one thing straight. Teaneck has never been a full-service township. It is a multi-service township that exceeds most Bergen County municipalities. Realize, though, that the level of service must vary to accommodate the capacity of residential wallets. Council must not be insensitive to those living on fixed, lost, or reduced incomes. I'll be frank. You don't provide services based on the wants of the wealthy. The former police building's newly discovered $400,000 asbestos removal for connecting the municipal building to the former police building and other miscellaneous tasks would be an added cost to what can be termed another fiscal fiasco. Don't build it. Determine if the architect has financial responsibility for its lack of proper planning. Please note that even the national government does not provide indoor connections between all federal buildings. Group some interactive services for the municipal building and others in the former police building. For example, the town's social worker does not need easy access to the building department. The court offices do not require access to the assessor. Remember, it's only a 40-yard walk between buildings. Another topic. If budget figures are questioned and details are provided by a resident, would it benefit the council and residents to have the manager meet with the resident to review and verify or correct the data? Another fiscal concern. December financial figures should have been a high priority to be added to the budget analysis as soon as they were available. Claims of excessive workload are inexcusable. Proper planning is part of the job. Does council now have this information? The size, scope, and placement of what is becoming the general uglification project on the municipal landscape is not accessible. Do we really need the capacity to do business as usual instead of providing a short-term emergency need? A home generator at $1,000 to $2,000 doesn't take over for PSE&G. It gives a resident the basics in time of need. Must taxpayers pay $687,000 for the equivalent of 600 home generators for one overkill industrial strength mega unit? Lastly, let's get the numbers straight. Returning 4 dispatchers to firefighting service is the equivalent of adding 4 additional firefighters to the roster. Thank you for your time.
Can I ask Harry to email that?
Yeah, thanks. Next person? Robbie?
I'm Robbie Langer, Chair Shade Tree Advisory Board. I had sent out an email last night or this morning. I hope everybody got it, but just in case, I'm going to read it again. Mayor, members of the Township Council, Teaneck Township Council, the Shade Tree Advisory Board unanimously recommends that Council include $50,000 for tree planting in the 2014 budget, since no money was allocated for this purpose in the 2013 budget. The approved Teaneck Community Forestry Plan states that we will be planting every year. For many years, Teaneck has been losing more and more trees that have not been replaced. We hope you will reconsider your decision to pull this item and add $50,000 for tree planting so that we can continue to build a community that we can all be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Anyone else? No one likes to speak? Raise your hand now. Dr. Shasheen.
Dr. Alex Rashin, Teaneck. A few issues. Issue number one is moving of the generator into more proper location, which will be along the driveway towards the new police building. It was discussed with a number of members of the council. Seems like there is agreement. It's a better position, and the only thing is to find how much more that would cost. Because it's possible, while positioning generator just right next to the building where it's consumed is a simple solution, it's not a necessary solution. And connecting the generator by the wires over the air with a couple of poles is absolutely acceptable solution. And the question is, right now it's necessary to move the generator. It's a huge ugly piece sitting in the most attended area of the municipal complex. So it's necessary to do. It's also fumes which would poison children and visitors when the generators work. That's one thing. Second thing is that we already discussed the points that it's necessary to cut the budget about 3% or more below its current level. There is a fund in the budget, and the recommendations of the public were kind of welcomed. Okay, the resolution H of the contract to complete the municipal complex said funds for this contract are provided in account for a total cost not to exceed $2,977,755. In the budget, there is an extra $400,000 for anticipated necessity to remove asbestos from the windows in the municipal building, and this and that and all this stuff. This is not something which is called planning. Should be all the plans should be developed and given to the contractor. Okay. Apparently, the architect did not foresee that, and this is either negligence or what, I don't know. But we should not pay $400,000 for that. The question is, it is necessary to find a way to remove some whistles and bells from the complex, which is possible to do, and I'll tell a couple of possibilities if I'm given extra time, but I cannot do it now. Okay, but this is unacceptable. Somebody you hired, architect, did not foresee that something should be done. Extra work. Didn't foresee that, and now we have to shell another $500,000. No. Okay? Again, this has to be to Councilman Schwartz. The thing is that this is full service community, and that's why he came here. He's not going to, as I understood from the previous speech, okay, give it up. Okay, Mr. Schwartz, if you made a mistake, it's not a full service community. We do not collect garbage. We do not polish toenails and all stuff, a lot of stuff, okay? If you made a mistake, okay, you can move, but we cannot move hundreds and maybe thousands of people who live on limited budget from this town because you want more service. You won't pay for that. It's okay with me, okay? But do not try to ask everybody to pay for your services. And find how many people are willing to get those services which other people cannot afford. Let these people collect money and buy for these services. We buy a lot of things, okay? Insurances for breakage of sewage and all stuff. We buy it. It's not provided by the town. So therefore, please cut this 400,000 and just give the order to the architect and to the contractor to find the ways to build, removing something, again, different things. For example, one thing is the second floor of the connector is absolutely unfunctional. It's a bridge to nowhere, okay? Would it cover that or not, I don't know. And there are many things should be discussed, okay? But this is possible to do. It's possible to do, and it's necessary to keep it to the budget and not to throw money because somebody didn't do their job properly from the first time. Okay? So, and please, again, please tell the manager, because you can do, four of you can do, tell it to him to estimate the cost of moving into a different position. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Alan?
Alan Sohn, Teaneck resident. It really is embarrassing to have Howard Rose rubbing it into our faces, using his fancy spreadsheets and IMAX to give his presentation, while other people here are using paper, but I guess he's out there using his cell phone. We have a building, a very large project going on for the old police building. Nobody asked for it. It's a nice thing to have, and there are a lot of nice things that a lot of people would like to have in Teaneck. But we need to figure out how to balance what we want with our means. There are 5,900 people over age 65, many of them collecting Social Security. There are 1,600 people, as of the last estimate, who are unemployed. Hundreds of people are under foreclosure. Hundreds of thousands of people who are challenged in managing every day. There are thousands of businesses who look at Teaneck and say, should I be building in Teaneck? Should I be relocating to Teaneck? Where I'm going to pay it $2.50 per $100 in assessed value? Or should I go to Fort Lee or Englewood or Paramus, where rates are substantially lower? Looking at the project on the capital budget, there's a $400,000 budget line item for asbestos removal, cabling, IT security. The question was asked, what is that item? And nobody had an answer. Nobody. There was no explanation of what that $400,000 covers. We live in a day and age where even a Howard Rose is carrying a laptop around with him. Technology exists to drill down, to provide information not only for the council and not only for the manager so that we can all explain to each other what those budget line items are, but to convince the public and the other 40,000 people here in Teaneck who have to pay for those amounts what that $400,000 covers. The $400,000 that's listed, along with other items for fixtures and other improvements here in the municipal building, comes off as being add-ons and overruns, things that should have been included in the base project for the old police building. If the old police building for $3.5 million was intended to provide a cohesive complex, the costs of connecting the two buildings should have been included. And I cannot see, nor can I understand, where that $400,000 is going. After I saw the budget presentation on January 9th, I sat down and did some math and calculated that the budget increase is not 3.11% as shown in the budget, but rather 5.75%. Pretty much a duplication of last year's 5.8%. The tax levy is going up $2.1 million, all other things being equal. We saw a number that ratables will go down another $100 million, adding up to $275 million in ratable losses over the past 4 years. Imagine the entire Glen Point, including the new proposed building, all disappearing. That would be less than the $275 million that's been lost over these past 4 years. The question was asked at the January 16th meeting. Mr. Manager, please address the question. Is it 3.11? Is it 5.75? Please be prepared to provide that answer at the next meeting. There was no answer at the January 23rd meeting. I've sent emails. I have received no acknowledgement regarding my request to just explain this discrepancy. And I think this council, in coming up with proposed budget cuts, needs to understand where we're coming from. Where are we going? What is the potential damage? I would love to cut overtime. It's great to cut it in half. Why not 100%? Where are those numbers? Why weren't they cut last year? Why weren't they cut 2 years? Why weren't they cut for the past 15 years? How much are tax appeals? It's January 30th. The tax appeals came in a month ago. There were roughly 2,000 appeals. There have been roughly 20 business days. Again, using math, using addition, to add 100 numbers a day does not seem to challenge our ability to come up with an answer, to know where we stand so that we can predict where we might be for next year. These are the kinds of questions that are very simple, basic questions that need answers. Not just for me. It's not just because I want those answers, but because every resident needs them. I look forward to those answers.
Dr. Powers?
Chuck Powers, Teaneck. You've heard a number of exceedingly important issues tonight, and I certainly hope that this council does not adopt the practice that has become quite routine here, which is to simply ignore those things you don't want to have to talk about. But I want to talk just for a few minutes tonight about the process that you folks find yourselves again following because you don't plan ahead. 2 years ago, last spring, Mark Schwartz ran on the platform that he would, the second that the current budget was passed, you would be about the process of trying to figure out how to anticipate where you should be in the future. If, in fact, personnel are huge questions, and the size of the fire department, the police department, are something about which you're not certain, and the question of how to relate issues associated with overtime to full-time employees, if those are real issues, they don't get addressed in short little sound bites, like, let's take 50% off, whatever it is that the manager happened to propose. Oh, yeah, Mr. Manager, I'm not going to take responsibility for saying what that is. You do that. No, it begins with a careful analysis. What does policing and fire protection in this township require? How do you maintain an ISO level of 2, which you're about ready to think about losing, and while Hackensack continues to go for 1 and gets the benefit to its citizens of having lower home insurance rates? Issues associated with process, like being caught last year with a surprise $2.1 million tax repeal, and being in this meeting at the end of January, still not having heard what those numbers are. Surprise, folks. $400,000, or is it $580,000, to make up for the mistakes that your no-bid contractor left you with when proposing a design that you never had comparative designs for, never had an opportunity to think more broadly about what you were doing. And yet you are committing huge amounts of money and being asked now in 2014 to throw another bond issue at something that your architect must have left out. And if it wasn't left out, Why wasn't it explained last week, and will it be explained this week? And will you, for heaven's sakes, do exactly what Mr. Sohn suggested a few minutes that you do? If you, in fact, really mean that you wanted this manager to come back with those numbers last week, why didn't you ask for them, and will you ask for them this week? Isn't it about time that the process that you folks use to spend other people's money actually becomes a more coherent process of mature adults trying to figure out competently how to go about this process? I see no competence. I see people saying what ought to be done in terms of taxes or planning or taxes. And guess what? Mr. Sohn's numbers are correct. We're heading right square back into it again. And what you're going to cut now, you have no preparation for, you have no basis for. It seems to me that you ought to be following at least what the freeholders do. They're planning to meet Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays continuously throughout February to figure out what to do with the freeholders' budget. And you folks managed to get together, some of you, not all of you ever, four discussions, maybe. Are you going to do it again next week? Who knows? I understand that several of you can't be there. It is a process that does not represent effective legislating of this task. That's why I called your process not sausage, which is what budget making and legislating is about, but mush. Thank you.
Anyone else? Sir?
Ruben Pinsky from Teaneck. Long-time watcher of your councilman sessions, but first-time visitor. While everyone on the council seems to understand that our residents feel our taxes are too high, it's become very clear to me in watching your meetings on the internet and over the years that there are three types of council members here in this room. Excuse me, I just ran in here. The first type of council member doesn't seem to think we have any spending problems at all, and that we can minimize the future tax increases simply by finding new sources of revenue. The second type of council member actually thinks taxes are too high, wants to ease the pain of taxpayers, but unfortunately, he or she is only willing to make small cuts around the edges of the budget, talks about some revenue opportunities as well. They focus on things like replacing armed police officers with less expensive unarmed police officers at court hearings, or cutting down on overtime hours, or hiring one or two less firefighters, or making the police department go one extra year without replacing a vehicle. The best this type of council member can hope for is to curb tax increases. Again, not cutting taxes. And that brings us to the third type of council member. This type of member has come to the realization that should be obvious to everyone, namely that it isn't sufficient to simply slow the increase in taxes. Taxes need to be cut, and the only way to actually cut taxes is to make significant changes to the way our town operates, not just simply nip around the edges of the budget. Freezing hiring for 1 year or delaying new car purchases for the police are important. They should be looked at, definitely something that everyone should be thinking about, but it's not going to do the job. It's this third type of council member that gives rise to the first moment that I want to talk about from a previous budget meeting a couple weeks ago. Adam Gusson made this exact point in the budget meeting a few weeks ago. He said it as clearly as anyone can, that there's absolutely no way to actually lower taxes in Teaneck without a fundamental shift in how the town operates. You can make as many small cuts as you want in any given year, but unless we make some fundamental changes, those small cuts just aren't going to do the trick. I don't agree with Councilman Gusson in a number of different areas, probably most areas, but as far as I can tell, he's the only one on this council with the guts to tell everyone the truth about the budget, which is that without fear of consequences from the firemen's union or the police interest groups, etc., and I want to commend Mr. Gusson on his brave ideas regarding putting a freeze on hiring for the fire department, transitioning one of the 4 fire stations into an incubator for a volunteer force, excuse me, consolidating fire and police dispatch, thanking the police force for doing more with less and asking them to continue down that path. I think these are all tremendous ideas that would make a huge dent in the budget, and I think these ideas took guts, and as far as I can tell, Mr. Gusson is the only one who sits up on this dais, not today, who's willing to make those comments. And to that point, I want to highlight another moment from the budget meeting a couple weeks ago that stuck out in my mind. Mr. Gusson asked a very simple question. He said, what are people willing to sacrifice in order to lower the budget? What are you willing to sacrifice? And one council member answered that question by saying absolutely nothing. that he wasn't willing to sacrifice anything, that Teaneck is a full-service town, and that residents should be willing to put their taxes, to pay high taxes in order to maintain the full service. Nothing should be cut, nothing at all. This council member made this comment, and multiple others on the council echoed his sentiments. That councilman also made a comment as well that I thought was pretty striking. He said that the proposed budget included only a small increase in taxes for the coming year. There was a debate whether it's $130 or $250 per household, but either way, to use the words of that councilman, that's half a meal for my family, and residents should be willing to give up half a meal in order to keep Teaneck a full-service town. I believe these comments perfectly convey exactly what Mr. Gusson and the like-minded Teaneck residents, who I believe make up the majority of this town, are up against with the current council members. With the exception of Mr. Gusson, nobody else on this council is willing to give up anything. And we've heard many members of the council say that anytime the council tries to cut any programs, there's a swell of anger and hostility from people clamoring to save their funding. Well, I say to that, surprise, surprise, of course that's going to happen. There's always going to be a concentrated group of small people who want to save their budget and make a lot of noise. But your job is not to listen to the squeakiest wheel and to give in to whatever they want just because they're noisy. Your job is to look at what's best for the town and its residents at large. And I believe that the overwhelming majority of residents are on Mr. Gusson's side, not yours. They'd be willing to give up on things which I'd be happy to enumerate if I had more than 5 minutes, as long as it meant that the result would be a meaningful cut in their taxes. And the comment that a $250 increase in taxes is simply half a meal, I believe shows just how out of touch this council actually is. That characterization is insane for two reasons. Number one, while $250 may be half a meal for some members of the council, for many members of the Teaneck community, it's the cost of bus passes to work for 2 months, it's 6 tanks of gas, it's weeks and weeks of groceries, and the fact that members of the council treat it like it's monopoly money in small amounts is just sickening to me. But possibly more importantly, the issue is not the $130 or $250 increases of taxes for this year. Taxes were too high last year. They were too high the year before that. We need to be talking about ways to cut taxes on the long term rather than focusing on 1 year's increases. So to pretend like we're only talking about small dollars when the average home pays $1,000 in taxes, in property taxes each month is ridiculous and insulting. Again, it shows just how out of touch the council is.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing no, the hands good and well for it is now closed. Mr. Rose, I think Councilman Schwartz, if you wanted your presentation just kind of emailed over to him, if you could, so that we could answer your questions. Some of the things that we did talk about, if you could just, you wanted him to email that, email your questions over to him so that he can get back to you. One of the things, just starting off with, I think, when we're talking about the generators and the overkill and 600,000, I mean 600, generators, 600 residence generators of what we're spending. Most members of this council have lived through not one, but 2 storms, and we realize how stretched we are when that happens. Now, it's easy to sit back and say that, hey, this is a waste of money, but then it's nobody in the public has put up or tried to respond to the countless questions and requests that we get during Hurricane Irene or the last one, Hurricane Sandy, or even a snowstorm when that happens for that matter. Having our township and our police department, our first responders open to respond to the public's needs is a must, and it's something that this community should invest in. Regarding the $400,000 that's in the capital budget, it's interesting that nobody missed that. I don't know why everybody's coming in today and asking for it, but I asked for it last week, and we're waiting for that $400,000 capital budget, itemized list is. Whether the manager has it tonight or he gives us in 2 weeks, we'll have that discussion. It's not like somebody's kind of pull it out and not address it. And if we were recording it, you can go back and look and see that we were recording it. Mr. Sohn, substantially lower tax rates, hundreds of people's in foreclosures, $275 million in revenue lost. The way you characterize the way the council does business, ratables lost, it's really disingenuous. And I think that if you want to use good and welfare for your campaign speeches, then, just tell people that you're running for office also. Because we have worked tirelessly, and one thing that people forget is that we all pay taxes here. This hurts us just as much as everybody else. When you're talking about people who live on fixed income, I have 2 sets of uncles and my parents who live in this town who are on fixed income. I have three cousins, one of who's out of work. So it's not like, we're coming around here and we don't feel the pain that everybody else feels. And Robbie, I'm glad that you came in asking for $50,000. Every year we do this dance of putting the money back in for a tree expansion. When the time comes, we'll be discussing it to see how much comes out and then how much goes back in. Dr. Powers, for 6 years you've been coming here. For 6 years you've been talking about the process. For 6 years you've been calling people immature and not as smart as you. So, there's one person that, during the school board time, that he would come in and he would say things, but at least he put up a website and put up analysis, the analysis that you're talking about. He would put up the analysis and he put up Teaneck causes and got people together. So I'm waiting to see your analysis for what, all the things that you're talking about. Because you come in for 5 minutes, you call us names, you say that we're immature, and you smile over there, and you think that you're the smartest guy in the room, and, I wonder how many of us agree with you. So, in the future, I'm looking forward to your website going up. Sir, I think that one of the salient points that you've made is talking about how council dances and cuts around the edges. Now, if you noticed, one of the things that Councilman Gusson talked about was, do we really need a fire department? And that's an easy question to ask when there's not a fire. But unfortunately, I looked at the Teaneck patch then. A breaking story was there was 2 deaths in Leonia. Now, whether, professional firefighters would have saved those lives or not saved those lives, this is an investment that this town has made for the last 30 years, meaning putting in infrastructure, putting in new fire stations, and building up equipment to make sure that, we have a paid fire department. And what we do in this town, when we talk about, the head count, hiring freezes are a significant way of keeping the cost down. Contracts, like the fire department, when we take their steps and stagger them out, that's a huge thing to do. Now, one of the things, again, that we all talk about, it seems like everybody wants to, to just cut off and pick a number and just try to cut numbers, and hopefully, if we got rid of the fire department, we'd get rid of $10 million, and, that would be a vacation for everybody a year. And it would be a considerable amount of savings for every homeowner. But what we don't talk about is what the fire department really does and what those counts that the calls that they go on, how much that affects the residents' lives every day. You might not take the benefit of it, but there are a lot of people in town who take the benefit of it, and that's kind of about building a society, and building the town that you want to live in. We collect taxes for the public good. We don't collect taxes to, quote unquote, build, a big municipal complex that nobody asked for. There are a lot of people, I hope that my kids, and I know my nephews, and I hope they grow up in Teaneck, and I hope that I get to say that I paid for the benefit that you have in 30 and 40 years. That's the purpose of the taxes that we collect, and that's the purpose of infrastructure that we spend our money on. Are times tough? Yes. Were they tough 60 years ago? Yes. And guess what? Teaneck gets through it, America gets through it, and we all get through it. So the cynicism that's in this room, the cynicism, and you can shake your head and continue to shake your head about the cynicism, but it is that cynicism that drives people away from coming to meetings, that drives people away from participating and listening to the stuff that goes on in this room. I know how many compliments I got on Botee Park. I know how many compliments I've gotten on people asking for the municipal building to be, finally, after 15 years, that eyesore is finally something's being done with it. And we are now moving in the sorts that now government goes in stages. Now we're in the stage of looking at ratables. No one took a position magically, because it's not politically correct, on the billboards that are not on the Rossi. Right? Well, pick a number. If it's $1 million, you're for it. If it's $250,000, I don't think so. Mr. Sohn, why did you pick that position? I asked you guys to take a position. This year, right? This year, yes, thank you. This year, pension benefits and health care benefits will expire. I brought that up last meeting. Nobody brought that up in good and welfare. Did anybody write to their to their legislatures and take a position on it. I didn't see that in the paper. I didn't see that anywhere. So if you want to come here and play politics, then play politics. If you want to come here and have the responsibility of running this government, putting things in perspective, then you know what? I welcome your input. But the truth is that you're just running for an election. So if anybody else has anything to add.
I'll start.
And I do, hold on one second. Mr. Manager, do we have that 400,000 breakdown that we asked for last week?
That's something I'm still working on the actual breakdown.
Okay. Well, we'll have
I
that
sent
before the budget.
emails about it, that there's certain things still going on to come up with the final numbers for that. But if you look at it, there's nothing that's missed out of it, okay?
Yeah, I don't want to address that part of it. I just want to talk about when the analysis is coming.
I'm going to start. Dr. Powers, if you can't control yourself and act like a mature adult, please leave the room. If you're going to crack up, laugh hysterically, bend over and laugh, and please leave the room. You sit here and lecture us about mature adults. If you need to step out, please leave. Just please leave the room. It's a very valid point about the garbage collection, and I appreciate you bringing it up, and it's something that I debate frequently with many people. That seems to be the one thing that's missing from the full service that I like to tout. And obviously, when I say full service, you're always going to say, well, you don't have a library 24 hours. There's always going to be something. The full service is a general term, very similar to when I say $130 is a family meal. That's an expression, and I apologize if I didn't round it down to the nearest penny of 8 sandwiches or my anniversary dinner or something like that. We have 5,900 seniors. Let's talk about full service. We can talk about the rides, the free rides that we offer to these senior citizens. We can talk about the many other offerings at the recreation department to the senior citizens. We could talk about the garbage. We pay $35 a month for garbage. Yes, that comes out to $420, and I do add that onto my taxes for what I pay to live in Teaneck. What we get for that is they come to the side of our house and they pick up our garbage. That's a nice perk. It's a very nice perk if you're a 92-year-old living in Teaneck and it's icy and it's snowy and you're not going to shovel the side of your house because, frankly, you can't afford to pay someone. You don't need the side of your house. But the garbage man's going to pick it up. And you don't have to put it out to the side. But let's just say, who cares? We need to go out and we need to buy, how many garbage trucks do we need to buy? How many additional union employees at the DPW do we need to now hire to pick up the garbage? Is it 4? Is it 6? How much are garbage trucks going for nowadays? 300,000. So we're talking about $900,000 in garbage. We'll need to repair those garbage trucks. We need to hire the additional people to pick up the garbage. And one thing Councilman Deputy Mayor Gus will always say is that private industry tends to do things better than the public industry. So I think for the $35, we get our money's worth. I don't think that was a request to cancel that, but that's incorporated in my full service argument. I also want to discuss, Mr. Pinsky, you live on a hill. I guarantee you if you lived in Bergenfield, you will slip on your hill. That doesn't happen in Teaneck. They do a very good job. Once again, I apologize if the $130 was taken in the wrong light, but I think we can imagine if that's a half an anniversary dinner, that we may be able to go on. But I will stick to my words. We live in a high-quality town. What I will not have is someone email me and say, why did it take forever to respond, for the police department to respond? What I do get is I had a false alarm and 4 fire trucks showed up in 4 minutes. I call the police, they're there in 2 minutes. That, to back up my words, is what I moved here knowing I'm paying for and what I continue to be proud to pay for. And I will not be a person that votes to cut the police department so that 3-minute response becomes a 6-minute response. As it relates to the fire department, I am a firefighter. I've been a firefighter for 14 years. And we talk about ISO ratings. ISO ratings can go either way in a volunteer town. Your insurance can go up as well. I'm proud to live in a paid town. We can't all of a sudden raise 350 people to supplement or to get the manpower we need to go pave, assuming the union can allow that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I believe I was out of the country last week, but I was following it, and someone said there's 24 people that live in Teaneck that are members of other towns. I'm one of them, and I know quite a bit of the other ones. They're not leaving to go become an auxiliary fire department. We don't have those bodies. But if we do have those bodies, and maybe we do, someone please email me. But we don't. And on the subject of email, no one has ever emailed me what they want to do, what they don't want to see, what they want cut from the budget. No one says, Sunday hours at the library, we really don't need. Let's cut that. We don't need the hours at the Rota Center. Let's cut that. No one. My email is mschwartz@teanecknj.gov. Someone, please, people email me, say, what do we want to cut? Tonight's new speech is, if I had more than 5 minutes, I'll tell you what I want. So how about this? Next week, can we start the conversation with, here's my 5 minutes, this is what I want cut from the budget. Let's skip the generator talk about the location. We understand that. Let's get right to the point. Tell me what you want to cut from the budget. Tell me where you want your quality of life to change. That's all I want to hear. Until then, we're going to continue to go through the process. I spoke about my campaign, how it's something I would rip apart. These budgets are prepared great. I would love if we have the December information. They're prepared great. These are healthy meetings. We should have more of them. But this is what we should be doing. And please email me. People call me. People email me. Tell me what you want cut. I don't get it. Maybe everyone else here gets a speech. I don't get it. No one's telling me. No one's coming here and talking about they want cut.
No, I'm good. You just got to be careful. My wife watches this. She's going to expect a bigger dinner for the anniversary. So
you Chinese food.
Dr. Pruitt?
I'd like to. Where are we? Okay. I'd like to thank Ron Goodman, who I believe has videotaped all the budget meetings this year except one. So, Mr. Rose, I think you should give him a round of applause. We complained about that, and he looked into his calendar and found a way to be here, and I think we should really appreciate that. As far as the $400,000 is concerned, I missed that meeting when that was introduced, and I think William is going to have a hard time finding a way to convince me that we're going to have to find $400,000 more to put into that police station. We're going to have to find the money somewhere else. That's just my point of view. As far as cutting the budget, we come to meetings and people say, cut the budget. But out in the big town, people want what they got. What we have to figure out a way to do is to look at this town from a 2014 perspective. If you walk around Teaneck, especially in the business district, you're in 1930. Let me say that again. You're in 1930. You have one-story businesses poked in here, there, and all over the place. And there's been no focus, to my knowledge, of looking at the whole business community as one. I believe if we did that, we could make those businesses more viable, and, of course, that would add to what they can contribute to lower the burden on the homeowners. Additionally, I looked in the tax assessor's document. There are more than 100 properties that are owned by the township that are not dedicated to anything. We've got to look at those to see whether or not we can develop them, and hopefully that will give us additional income. I'm not interested in adding any new staff to this community that we don't have this current year. If you want to add new staff, find the resources in the undedicated land and in the refurbished business community, then you can add new staff. That's it for now.
Just to dovetail on that, when you're talking about the business community, this council and the council before it has floated previous times of going and turning, Cedar Lane up 8 stories, especially by Stop and Shop. The community rejected that in its entirety. If you look at North Teaneck Road, since 2006, when the zoning was changed because of a group of people who went in and said, you know what, we have a meeting in the Rhoda Center and change the zoning because of, I think at the time it was on Shepherd Avenue, some kind of development. No one has ever come back and say, hey, we have to look at this zoning again. So if people are ready to have that conversation on North Teaneck Road or on Cedar Lane or on Queen Anne Road, we are all for it. The development that is going on in town, when developers do come up because they understand that they have a zoning board who is going to look at things in not only a planning sense, but will say, will a variance bring in ratables, whether it's on Palisade Avenue, whether it's Glen Point, whether it's on Teaneck Road, know that chances are you'll be able to build something. But it's interesting that when we talk about zoning, or we talk about the one place in the plaza where a developer came in and tried to put in money, there was opposition again from the town. So, from residents in the town. So, we can look and talk about ratables, but it's funny, everybody wants to keep the low-density makeup of this town. Absolutely.
Last night, I met with the Teaneck Road Community Committee. I don't know what they call themselves, but the Teaneck Road, North Teaneck Road Community Committee. And I told them, look, most of the businesses on Teaneck Road are one story. Most of the houses that are behind Teaneck Road are 2 stories. If you took a measuring tape and started at the ground and went to the peak of the house, it's probably 30 feet high. 24 feet is an impossible dream. No one is going to come into Teaneck, North Teaneck Road or anywhere else, and put anything up that's 24 feet. And they're ready to listen to that because they want all this stuff. And people have to be convinced that if you want all this stuff, you have to give something up. And we don't need to see the sky everywhere we look in Teaneck. It may be necessary to go to 2 or 3 or 4 stories high, and people will complain about that. But they complain about everything. So if going to 4 stories is going to slow the tax rate in Teaneck, that's a choice we have to make. And I think we ought to be grown up about it and say, okay, that's a necessary requirement to maintain all the stuff that we want to keep. We cannot continue to depilorate, if you pardon the expression, the homeowners. They can't afford to continually pay additional taxes. But there is a resource here. And I'm talking about the undedicated land and the business community that will help us not lower taxes. If they say they're going to lower taxes, they're lying to you. But it will help us to slow the rise in taxes, and I think we should look at it.
Councilor Stern?
I don't have a whole lot. First of all, about that $400,000, the infamous $400,000 we've been talking about all night long. I'm looking, Mr. Brown, I'm looking forward to that analysis. I don't know how crazy I'll be about the $400,000. I wasn't crazy about the building in the first place. I didn't vote for the building in the first place, so I don't know where the $400,000 is going to go after I voted no on the building. That's number one. Number two, Councilman Pruitt makes some interesting points, but as I said at one of our previous council meetings, we have a resource in our town called a planner, who has got a pretty extensive amount of experience in development in towns such as Teaneck. And we don't have to expend any money in looking into new development or redevelopment because all we need to do is have the planner or ask the planner to go out and speak to the developers that he knows or that he's familiar with to see what they would be looking at, what they would need in terms of zoning, and then we can decide whether it makes sense or not. We've changed the zoning on, correct me if I'm wrong, on Cedar Lane. We've changed the zoning on North Teaneck Road. We've changed the zoning on DeGraw Avenue, and nothing has gotten built.
And on Teaneck Road, medical zone.
Well, the medical zone, yeah, well, they're doing a little bit of work on that, I think, aren't they? Some of the medical stuff, maybe not. Okay. Right. But particularly on Cedar Lane, where we did go to four stories?
4 or 5, I don't know.
Whatever it was, on North Teaneck Road, we also went up, and nothing has gotten done. So what that tells me is that, we need to let the market give us the options that it is looking for in terms of development. What else?
I think we spoke about promoting the fact that we had those changes. I don't know if we ever did that. I mean, I don't know where we promote it.
I have to imagine that any, most developers are keeping an eye on Teaneck or keeping an eye on looking for opportunities in development know when zoning has changed. So the ones that are experienced enough. Another comment I wanted to address was I think maybe it was addressed or Mr. Rose mentioned when he spoke that we're not a full-service community, but we're a multi-service community, which is a very valid point. And he spoke about the people who cannot afford, certain things in town, certain things that they really need. And that, I think if we just turn that around a little bit, look at it from the other direction, we realize that because we are a multi-service community, we give those people who can't, who don't have the wherewithal, we give them the services because of what we do in Teaneck. We give them the services that are available to them in terms of recreation, seniors, sports programs, and so on and so forth. So on and so forth. So I think I don't want to turn around what you said, but I think that's just really an extension of what you said, is that we're a multi-service community for people who are not that, who don't have the incomes that some other people do, who don't have the wherewithal or the net worth that other people do, that because we are a multi-service community and because of the services that we do provide, we take care of those people as well. The last question I had for the manager was, and maybe this is a little bit too premature, I'm still, could you tell us when, I know you don't have them yet, when are we going to have, there's two sides to the budget equation. We're talking about spending here. When are we going to have the revenue numbers or a real good fix on the revenue numbers?
At the next meeting, we'll have the revenue numbers. If we do the same thing that we did last year, and I don't know if we're going to discuss this tonight, but our next meeting, we listed the budget to be discussed at our regular council meetings. So we'll list it. We'll have the revenue numbers. Every year we've provided those revenue numbers around the time that we get ready to introduce the budget. But we will have those numbers very shortly. We'll have
the reason I ask is that people, I think some people, maybe not in the room tonight, but I know that some people are a little confused about the difference between appropriations and the tax rate and how much we actually have to raise in taxes. And I think that before, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because we're not going to know what the tax rate is, which is what the bottom line is in everybody's pocket, what's going to happen to the tax rate until we're done with revenue as well.
Yeah. I think that, I tried to make it clear when I made my first presentation in presenting the budget, that the information that I'm providing and that I'm preparing on December 26th, or that I've been preparing since we started working on it in October, and I finally get it into a package to deliver to the council on December 26th, is preliminary information. We're way ahead of what other towns are doing. The council has a budget in their hand the year before, and a long time before the budget's even due. Statutorily, it's something like January 15th. I'm supposed to have it to the council or beyond. But we try to get ahead of the process so we do not have a complete picture. Now, some question has come up about the appropriations, the revenue numbers, and all these different things. And I will say this. It's possible to spend more, and the tax levy not go up at all. So, I tried to keep it to, this is the spending increase. Okay, just because we're spending more.
That's what I wanted to point out.
Just because we're spending more does not necessarily mean that the levy is going to go up a like amount. It depends on how much revenue we are anticipating and targeting. So this is a process, and we all have to wait and let the process play out and let all the numbers come in. It takes time.
Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just one comment on his comment, and we actually have a planning board member here, Eric Brower. Thank you for coming, Eric. We have had recent 7-story apartment building that's been approved. There's a 14-story Glen Point being approved. So I think,
being approved, but
sorry, I apologize. Being discussed with the planning board. My apologies. But I did want to say that we are heading in that right direction. That 7-story building was also approved with very little opposition. As a matter of fact, a lot of people in Teaneck were actually for it, and people who are usually against it. So I think we're actually making headway, and people realizing that we're heading in that direction. And so I want to say it's not completely falling in the sky.
All those buildings on the other side of the highway, Ridgefield Park, if there wouldn't have been the opposition way back when, it would have been on our side.
That's probably when I was in second grade, but yes. Yeah, absolutely. I thought about it.
It's your fault.
It is. I didn't
want to make it clear. I'm not quite sure about the $400,000 for the additional for the building. I am a big supporter of the police building. No one is. But I don't support the $400,000. I think it's like everything else. We have a budget. We stay within the lines of the budget. And so I don't support that. Now, as far as, there's just one thing that I think we should talk about before we jump into the budget. Some people spoke about a hiring freeze. Some people spoke about the fact that we are hiring 2 more DPW workers. You said no more employees. I spoke last week. I said I want a complete hiring freeze across the board. I'm one of 7. I don't know if I have 3 others that agree with me, but because I understand at one meeting...
I wasn't here for that meeting, just like you were.
So are you saying you want a complete hiring freeze?
Complete hiring freeze, yes, until we understand where everything is, including the 2 DPW workers.
We throw terms around and we're not really clear about what we mean. If you say complete hiring freeze, it means that the number of people who were hired in Teaneck today will be the same number hired in Teaneck for this year. Is that what a hiring freeze is, or are we talking about the number of people who are allocated for these spots?
No, hiring freeze is that you don't add additional bodies, that whoever is currently clocked in and on our payroll is what we want to continue with right now.
If they retire?
And if they retire, then we don't replace them until we discuss it as a council.
I would differ with that a little bit. If we have a certain number of people in position now, and some of them leave, I think we should stay at the same level of people that we have.
So you say fill them?
Yeah, that's still a hiring freeze. We're not adding any more people, but if somebody retires,
if we got 92, stick at 92.
You need that position filled.
So you're referring to freeze, you're saying freeze and lower the freeze.
No, I'm saying freeze the salaries of the people as they are now.
I fully understand what you're saying. I hear you, Dr. Pruitt. I fully understand what you're saying.
I'm asking for no hiring whatsoever, that we can review on a case by case with the manager based on what his needs are and what the department's needs are. But if we want change, we're either going to, and that's what's one of the members, not everybody said it, but we either have to make drastic cuts and fire, which I don't think that there's support to do that, or as those positions become available, we make a decision whether or not we want to refill it. So I would like to have a complete hiring freeze and then evaluate based on a case-by-case.
A hiring freeze, Ellie, would mean, maybe I'm wrong, a hiring freeze would mean a hiring freeze.
Hiring freeze.
No new hires.
No new hires.
Correct.
That's what I'm asking.
And if somebody retires, no new hires.
No new hires. The manager can discuss what's us saying.
No new hires. And you have to make I'm not saying I'm supporting a hiring freeze, because until I see the revenue numbers, I don't know what I'm in favor of. Okay? But if you're saying a hiring freeze, that's a hiring freeze.
Right.
Yeah, but I disagree with that. because of the pragmatism attached to it.
Am I being too pragmatic?
No, pragmatism is if you're staying with the same number of employees that you have now, and let's say something happens, and 10 people in a critical area leave, that kind of handicap is insurmountable. So I'm just saying we stay with the number of employees we have. We don't hire any additional employees. But if 10 policemen leave, you should fill those spots. So that's where I'm at.
Let's do this. I mean, I think that we're in agreement about holding off on hiring the DPW workers.
Do we have four that
I'm in agreement with you.
I'm not prepared to make any decisions about hiring or not hiring until I see all the numbers.
No, but we are agreed to hire. Apparently, we do agree to hire 2 more DPW workers.
I didn't read anything. I mean,
we as a council. I wasn't there, but
Mr. Manager, if you would need to add something.
Yeah, I just want to make a recommendation. We had a hiring freeze in 2013, and I'm recommending that we continue the freeze and remain at the 2013 level. So those vacant positions that we had in the budget, those same vacant positions that we froze in 2013, that we freeze those same vacant positions again.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of discussion to happen on this. I mean, we have 6 presentations to go on, so let's get moving with the presentation.
Can you just talk, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, because I know we had this discussion, I think, 2 weeks ago when we spoke about, or maybe it was last week, when we spoke about cutting during budget meetings. How many more budget meetings do we have?
We have going to have at every meeting that we have until we approve the budget, there'll be a section at our council meetings to talk about budget.
Okay, but this is our last budget Thursday.
Yes.
Okay, so when do we want to discuss cutting?
Look, I think that Councilman Stern has a valid point. Let's look at the revenue. When we have all the information, then we can say, okay, you know what? Let's see what we're taking out and what's going in.
But just for clarification, if tomorrow our manager goes out and hires 2 DPW workers, is that what the spirit of the council wanted? Is that not what the council wanted? Because what I want is complete freeze of any new bodies, and then we can evaluate on a case by case, and that can come to the council. You know what? If our CFO wins the lottery and she leaves, then you know what? The manager will say, "Listen, we lost a good CFO. We need a new CFO." I'll say, "Okay, well, that makes sense. The hiring freeze. We need a CFO."
So you sound like you're agreeing with me.
No, you said you want to fill to what we have, and the manager said you want to fill to what we had last year. I'm saying no. We stopped hiring because what's going to end up happening is whoever's sitting up here next year, when things are tight, they're going to start firing people, or in 2 years or 3 years, and that's irresponsible. So we have to start being more responsible with how we selectively move forward, not just for today, but for later. You know, because nobody wants to go to work, and it's not fair to the manager to have employees that want to go to work not knowing if they're going to have a job because the council has such a crunch this year. So,
okay,
my feeling is complete freeze, put away the employment applications, and then if there is a situation that arises that we need to hire somebody for whatever reason, or whatever the circumstances, come to the council, and the council can decide. That's absolutely needed. Yes, we need a CFO, or and then we can discuss. We may not want to add additional firefighters. We may not want to add additional police officers, just because last year there was additional police officers. That's my motion, request, or whatever you want to say.
Okay, this is. If you pardon the expression, this is a workshop meeting. We're going to make it into a workshop, have a discussion. I think you're saying the same thing that I'm saying. Let me tell you what I mean.
Tell me what you're saying, because I know
we're saying no more additional employees, period. However, if a critical area loses employees, we have the option to fill it to this level, the 13 level.
Not the manager has the option. The council can decide.
Yeah.
No, the council will decide.
So you want it to come to the council?
Yes.
Okay, but you're giving the manager the option to bring that to the council, or you're saying?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the manager can always come to the council and say, "Listen, we lost 10 police cars because of a building fell down or whatever it was," or We need more police cars. I mean, we have to be responsible with how we operate the town, but that's what my request is. So are there 4 people that agree with that? And then we can always, say, oh, we look at this, look at all this money we made in revenue, so maybe we should hire another X person.
You're saying so. Elliot, you're saying 15 different things at the same time.
Tell me what I'm saying.
What I'm saying is the number of people who we have in each of these slots now is a number we're going to have for the rest of the budget cycle. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. What if one police officer retires? Do we fill that position?
That position is currently filled. It should be filled.
Okay. So that's not what I'm
next
saying.
year.
So what I'm requesting is that we have a hiring freeze, and on a case-by-case, it comes to the council.
Okay, so you don't have 4 people who agree with you on that.
Okay.
All right,
But are we hiring the DPW guys tomorrow?
Mayor, just to be clear, I don't agree. I'm not saying no.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm not prepared to make a decision on that. I just don't. I want to see the whole thing.
I'm not saying I'm going to agree with Councilor. I like the idea of freezing. We're in between, somewhere between two, and they're both very healthy discussions. Let's continue with the idea that we're heading in that downward direction.
Okay, does anybody want to stop the hiring of the 2 DPW hires?
No, I'm not doing that before we have a budget. We have a budget.
We don't have that.
That's right. We don't have a budget.
Great. Okay, first presentation is the auditor's presentation.
Is it on? You don't like it?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, and CFO. A couple of brief comments on some of the deadlines that have been extended by the state for the budget. The Mayor had mentioned previously about the introduction date. I think maybe the manager also commented on that. That's been revised from January 15th to February 7th. So you have until February 7th to formally introduce the budget to the council. And then the council has now until March 14th to do their formal introduction/approval meeting. The adoption on the budget is extended until April 25th, and normally the state is allowed the next meeting afterwards, which Chris and I have worked out to be, I guess, the 29th. Right. So that would be the shoot-for date for the adoption. For this budget year, you're eligible for self-exam, which kind of speeds the process up a little bit down at the state level.
It's every 3 years? Is that every 3 years?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Depending upon if you meet all the criteria, but in your case you do. The state aid numbers, commonly called COMTRA, will be released right after the governor's budget on February 25th. Right after that, on the 28th, I gave the CFO the information, which I'm sure she would have had on the webinar. They're doing a webinar that everyone could participate in and find out directly from the state what their estimates are for state aid. That would be on February 28th. That webinar is
It's under an hour.
under an hour.
1 o'clock to 1:50. I invite anybody.
Sure. Yep. That was really it, unless anyone has any direct questions.
Can I just add?
Sure.
Be adopted by the middle of May.
They're suggesting the adoption date to be April 25th or the next following meeting, which would be April 29th.
In April.
Yes, that's their recommendation.
Or what? I'm sorry.
And then after if you have an amendment process which extends that, then that would, of course, change that date.
And if we don't, I've always discussed, we'd like to have these budget conversations. There should be more than just 4 weeks in January. What happens if we don't? Last year there was a conversation and we were behind schedule, we're in a possible default. What happens if we're waiting on numbers, we want to go through a thorough review? There was talk about them, not people were... It was from people in the audience. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not you. Relax. It wasn't the mayor that discussed the default. What is a default? You didn't mention, you said suggestion. What is this process, which we're waiting on a lot of information, and we want to have some very healthy dialogue back and forth and with the community, or hopefully with the community emails and talks to us. When do we have to get it voted into? Have to, not suggested. You use the word suggest.
Yes, the state suggests April 25th. That's their statutory deadline. So
I always said suggestion. That's the rule.
That is a rule. Yes.
So it's not a suggestion. It's the rule.
It's the suggestion.
It's a suggested rule.
By the 25th. The deadline is the next meeting.
So if we can't cancel this, if we cancel our May 6th meeting, we don't have to do it until May 20th.
No.
Sorry, if we cancel our April 29th meeting, we don't have to do it until May 20th. Yeah.
They have allowed, the leeway has been, if you are adopting at the next scheduled meeting after the statutory deadline. So in this particular instance, when Chris and I were just looking at the calendar, if we couldn't do it on the 25th, you would have to do it on the 29th.
Understood.
Unless you were in the amendment process, if you were waiting for another meeting for the amendment. If you introduced it, you have a public hearing on the 25th. You're all set to adopt, and then an amendment gets brought up, which, as you know, you would have to vote on, introducing the amendment.
Right.
And then it might or might not have to be advertised, depending upon the size of the amendment, depending upon if the state brought the amendment up or you brought it up yourself. Depending upon all those things, then it would either be the next meeting or, as you said, would be maybe in May.
Got it.
There had been budgets adopted in the state of New Jersey past the statutory deadline in other municipalities.
And many municipalities have adopted them in September, October.
Yeah, we're not doing that. Stop saying that. Stop. I mean, all of guys default, September, you're giving them all.
Let me just add one thing. I just want to say how far we are ahead in this process, okay? The statutory deadline for the manager to give the budget to the council has been moved to February 7th.
That's why we're here.
The council had the budget December 26th, 43 days before. We are very, very far ahead in this process, and I would bet much far ahead than most municipalities.
Sounds like some council members are ready to wrap it up.
No. It's just, anyway. Does anybody have any questions for the auditor?
Thank you, sir.
I think that one of the things that I don't think the public understands is we are already using next year's budget as of January 1st.
We're using the temporary budget.
In a temporary phase, but we're spending next year's money already.
That's correct. You're operating, yes, you're operating.
That's the way it's always been done, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Mr. Auditor, can
I know how to do it.
Mr. Auditor?
Yes, Mr. Auditor now. If you could just elaborate a little bit on the township's debt ratio, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, of course.
What the debt ratio is, what's allowable by the state, and, what position you think Teaneck is in regarding its debt.
Right. Well, as you all know, we've had this conversation, and I've made this comment before. Your debt is far below the statutory limit. Chris has worked out your annual debt to be it's a half of 1%. A half of 1%, and the statutory limit is 3.5%.
What's the number?
The actual debt, the net debt is $29 million.
Okay. And how much is going to be paid off this year? Is anything coming off of those notes, or any notes being paid off?
There will be pay down on existing bonds, and what's your debt service?
How much? Our debt service is 2.5, I believe.
Yeah, includes interest, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2.5.
Okay, so 2.5, and out of the 2.5, there's part of that's principal, part of it's interest, so I didn't really,
Yeah, it's just whenever we start talking about debt, that's why you shouldn't open the door.
right.
Because, no, I remember we had when we did our debt servicing plan last year, I just don't remember off the top of my head how much is coming off the principal this year and how much we're adding on.
And I think you must like this was the hardest year, because then there's some things that are paid down and it begins to...
Because there were some lawsuits that were paid down. I thought they were coming off this year, correct?
Do you have my schedule, my spreadsheet?
No.
Mr. Auditor?
Okay. William, if you could just get us that information about exactly how much where we are, where we'll be at the end of this year.
I think it would be an awful error for us to look at
Expenditure pages.
the debt limit. If we can not have any more debt, that would be wonderful. Of course. So the fact that it's a half of 1% is marvelous. We don't need to go to 1% just because we can.
Yeah, but let me just add this. I mean, and this is the purpose of borrowing. If we have a project like the building next door that costs $3.5 million, it's appropriate to borrow on it because the life expectancy of the renovation is over 20 years. So why should the resident of today pay the total cost of the renovation when a resident who stays here for 20 years who will get the benefit of that building, it should be paid over that period. So it's appropriate to borrow on these projects and not just pay the $3.5 million today. Why should a resident of today be burdened
I don't think
with
that
the total
anybody's
cost?
disagreeing with, using debt as a tool for the town. That's not what we're...
That is the idea behind the capital project.
that's-
Mr. Mayor, I had a question for the auditor.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I have the answers to your question. I'm sorry I didn't have them at first. We're going to pay down $1.15 million in bond principal. We're going to pay down $709,000 in note principal. We're going to pay down $40,000 on the downtown business loan and another $75,000 to the BCIA. So roughly $2 million.
$2 million.
$2 million. Okay. And then how much notes, you just, how many?
The bond principal is 1.1.
No. How many new notes did we take out this year then? I want to see if it's a wash. See what I'm saying? Like, okay. Did we?
Oh, it's about $2 million.
Did I pay off $2 million, then I borrowed another $2 million? That's what I'm asking, or what that net number is.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
If you don't have it, that's fine. I'll get it later. Councilman Stern had a question.
Yes, Mr. Auditor.
Paul, they went up about $2 million, and that was in the appeals
Right.
and Voti Park.
Okay. Go ahead.
You said our debt is about 1/2 of 1%.
Point 0.527%.
Right, 0.527%, right, about 1/2 of 1%. How many towns, how many municipalities do you audit in state of New Jersey?
10.
Right. And from your experience, where would you say we fall on the spectrum of that in that debt ratio? From the 10 that you're aware of, that you're personally aware of, as well as others I'm sure you've looked at.
Low, and I would say that's a very low percentage.
Top tier? Top tier?
Top few, yes.
That's full service.
All right.
Multi-service town.
Does anybody have any more questions for the auditor?
Do the breakdown, sorry, you said Voti Park. There was a Voti Park bond?
Correct. So that's authorized debt, not issued yet, but there's the amount we borrowed on that, and then also the amount we borrowed towards the tax appeals, the tax appeal of funding. So those are the things that spiked.
It's in the 29? Or it's not yet because it's not issued?
No,
No,
it's 29. We went up from 27 to 29.
So it is in the
It's
29.
net effect of those items.
Less to pay
So
on.
we paid
Got
some
it.
things down.
Understood.
How do we match up with surrounding towns in terms of debt?
Well, again, based on that percentage, because every town is different, that percentage, just so that we all know what we're talking about here, we're not just talking about the dollar amount of debt. We're talking about the dollar amount of debt in relationship to the equalized valuation of the town. That is the way the county and the state compares every town, because you can't compare every town exactly. So that's their ratio to get everyone to compare apples with apples. So, no, we look good. We do. No, I mean, that's a low percentage, equalized. So the next town might have less debt, but their percentage could actually be higher because their assessed valuation is lower.
We're concerned about the percentage debt.
Correct.
Okay, not the amount of money. We don't care about that.
Well, we care about that,
but I'm saying that the percentage is what we can compare.
Right, and that's the way they equalize it. That's actually called an equalized valuation. That's the term they use.
Is there any documentation out there available to the public?
Absolutely.
That shows the percentage debt of surrounding towns?
Absolutely. If you go on the Division of Local Government's website, you can pull up every municipality in the state, and you can pull up a sheet that looks like this. I'll give you a copy of it. And you can actually compare every town in the whole state of New Jersey. All this information is public. It's all on one website.
I'd like to see Bergen County.
You can
a printout of Bergen County.
You can go in and print out every municipality.
But you know where it is, so if you just print it out, we could have it, right?
All right, before we give you some more work to do, anybody else have any more questions for him?
I'm gonna. The debt, the $29 billion. Can you just tell us about authorized debt and how we deal with that issue of authorized debt and money we actually borrowed?
Right.
How that works.
Every time the council takes a recommendation to do a new capital ordinance and approves a capital ordinance, you're authorizing debt. The authorization of debt is what shows up in your annual debt statement. So your authorized debt, which in this case as net debt is $29 million, you may not have issued that debt yet. That's just your legal authority to issue that debt. So out of that $29 million, you might have issued $20 million or $15 million. But the difference is what you've already approved. The mayor and council have already approved that much debt authorization. Then, depending upon market conditions, you might decide to go and do temporary financing of that debt, permanent financing of the debt, which is the bonds. But that doesn't, when you do a bond issue or a bond sale, that does not change the debt that you have. That's the existing debt that you've already authorized. All we're doing by doing a bond sale is locking in these low historic interest rates from my last presentation that we're locking into it for a long term.
Okay, and just one other thing, Mayor. And the item that Christine mentioned, the $1 million with Voti Park, that's authorized debt. We did not issue that debt yet. So it's not issued. The council authorized a certain amount of debt. So it's authorized, not issued, nothing spent on that. So
bids came in lower, correct?
Yes, the bid did come in at 2.9. I believe it was 2.9.
So you authorized the one.
Yes.
We authorized one.
Yes.
But
we anticipate.
So we need a chart that shows authorized debt and actual debt.
Well, these are the things that you get. These things will be in the audit, right?
Yeah,
Well,
you
not
did
only
get it.
that, they're in that.
They're in
And
this debt statement right here.
And that is going to be up on the website.
The annual debt statement's due today or tomorrow. It's
Filed
tomorrow.
Today. It's due tomorrow. I filed it today, and it will be put up on the website tomorrow.
Yes.
So I know you've told us about this before and you presented this before. You broke down the $20 million, $29 million for us a while back. I know there's a lot of it was from some lawsuits from years ago. Is that something when you get a chance, if you can just send that out again when you get a chance, Christine, just the breakdown of the $29 million? The origin of the $29 million.
Yes.
No rush. When you get a chance.
I'll take that.
Yeah, when you get a chance.
Is that what you're asking me to do?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Ron.
Thank you.
Ron. Next item on tonight's agenda is our insurance auditor. Our insurance adjuster, sorry.
Consultant.
Or insurance consultant.
All the expended numbers are good, it's just that the preliminary column, until they can make cuts. On the municipal website under finance. On the municipal website under finance.
My name is Wayne Dietz. I'm the president of D&H Alternative Risk Solutions, which is the risk manager for the Township of Teaneck. Good evening, council members, mayor, manager. The 2014 insurance process is completed. We start work on the 2015 process next Wednesday, our first meeting of the year. Early in the fall of 2013, working on the township's insurance portfolio, we knew it would be a challenging year. We completed all surveys of properties, which is an annual, properties and equipment, which is an annual event. The commercial insurance market is such that companies are withdrawing from New Jersey or expanding, worse yet, expanding their limitations on coverage to shift the exposure they once assumed from their books back to the municipality. That's the state of the state. This is done either by increasing retentions, deductibles, or by using policy language to carve out particularly troublesome coverage from the standard policy. This year's process had us meeting with at least 3 joint insurance funds, one of which Teaneck participated in as a study, and several private insurers. Some private insurers we've used previously are losing their appetite for the municipal insurance market, and as a result, participation in higher risk joint insurance funds is on the rise and in the future may be necessary. Workers' compensation continues to be difficult, not just in Teaneck, but in most areas of our state. The coverage is subject to a liberal independent court system, and it's very sensitive to the medical treatment costs, which are in the news almost daily. Costs are rising, and providers are shifting their losses in health treatment to other lines like workers' compensation. We were ready for this, and through our proprietary agreements with providers and tight management of workers' compensation injuries, we're able to reduce by 50.99% the 2013 workers' comp bills received for medical treatment of employees, from $531,000 down to $260,000. Land use boards are becoming a favorite target for attorneys to attack decisions. Title 59 and the immunity it provides municipal officials and the government is under attack in the legal system. So, as your risk manager, we work very closely with council, HR department, township manager, and each supervisor to form a team approach. What is being proactively done in Teaneck, both in 2014 and in the upcoming 2015 year?
Good evening. Paul Messerschmidt with D&H. We've talked before in prior years. I'd like to just go over the, highlight the things that were done in 2013 with the township employees. We'll start with 6 safety and loss control meetings were held with the supervisors. This was on an every other month basis. We then had 6 insurance meetings with the Self-Insurance Commission where complex cases are strategized and insurance coverage reviews are completed. There were comprehensive surveys done of the township buildings, parks, facilities, and equipment over the summer, which also included boiler inspections, building appraisals, and playground equipment. Obviously, this is necessary to make sure that you have the proper amount of insurance on each of these types of items. You're not overinsured and you're not underinsured. There was also pre-OSHA training, which is state required training for DPW, fire, and police, which includes right to know, bloodborne pathogens, lockout, tagout, and confined space training for these employees. There was quarterly self-inspections that were performed by a certified loss control professional, and every department was completed, and it was filed electronically. These are designed to identify potential hazards and to reduce accidents before they happen. So it's not just a matter of buying insurance and handling claims, it's also being proactive to try and prevent accidents from happening. There was an analysis of every claim that occurred via electronic supervisor's accident report. So we're working with the supervisors to file these reports so that we can review them and try and find areas in the workers' compensation, general liability, and auto liability to evaluate the cause, the near misses, and future prevention. There was also a review of workers' compensation and litigation that occurs regularly, and collaborative strategy has led to positive results of your claims. We also supplied the police department with instructor kits for work zone safety and provided training to the Department of Public Works, which included pocket guides for them. There was also employment practices and attorney was supplied to do training for every supervisor in the township on all forms of harassment, which is one of the big areas that you've probably heard in the news. There's a lot of claims being filed and lawsuits being filed in the employment area against the employers. We've taught them how to avoid, recognize, prevent, and how to deal with it when it happens with employees so that the employees' rights are protected as well as the townships. And to prevent this from happening again. A refresher of this course is scheduled for this April so that this is kept foremost in the minds of your supervisors. Our loss control also provided a consultant for training and inspection of facilities and playgrounds, including specialized training for seasonal employees. We've addressed the challenges that we faced as a risk manager with a comprehensive insurance plan. And we've tried to never stop talking, meeting, and asking questions since we've arrived here several years ago. The 2013 market conditions, as Wayne talked about, required us to move some of your insurance. One of your carriers decided that they weren't writing municipalities at all. So then we had to find somebody else that was willing to write the insurance. So now you have two new insurers, Munich American and Chubb Insurance, which have been added to the portfolio. Both companies have an A+ rating in the insurance industry. As experts in the area of public entity insurance, we serve in varying capacities over 100 municipalities, boards of eds, community colleges, municipal utilities, and counties. And since working with you, we'd like to give credit to the council. Without your support and understanding, these issues would not have been possible to meet head-on. Teaneck has a success story of good management coming together with good risk management. With that said, we look forward to further cost savings in areas of exposure, and we welcome any questions that you have, and we want to thank you for the opportunity to serve the township.
There's a couple of, if there's one thing, I mean, I know we looked into getting into some Bergen County joint insurance funds, and we were rejected. If you could send over just a documentation of that, why they rejected us, so they give us a reason, or they just said, hey, you know what, we're just rejecting you out of hand. I'd like to start that dialogue, and how does the Bergen County, how many JIFs are there in Bergen County?
There are two.
There are two. And each town appoints members of the board. That's how it works.
They appoint a commissioner and an alternate.
Each town does.
That's correct.
And then who gets to ultimately approve who gets into the JIF?
Usually it's the JIF has what they call an insurance underwriter.
Okay.
Who evaluates that.
So the underwriter.
They evaluate anyone who files application, if you will.
Okay, so we got rejected by the underwriter. Okay.
What do you? That does not mean that they would not. I mean, every year, is a new year. Okay.
What do you attribute the cut in workmen's compensation costs? What is that caused by, the reduction?
In the medical bills, it's because we use what we call network providers who have agreed to provide medical service to us at a discounted rate. The amount of treatment that we can drive into that network to those providers results in a reduction. If the employees, if it's emergency service and maybe an emergency room is involved, maybe it's someone outside of that network, those costs are a little higher. So it really is
not a reduction in the number of claims that the workers have made. It's a change in the insurance company.
It's both. It's both. It's both the reduction in the number of claims and in the severity of those claims. That's how badly injured, how much treatment they require. There is a bunch of factors that enter into it.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome.
You should thank the auditor. He took all the hits. Good night. Next item on tonight's agenda is the library budget. Come on down.
Good evening, everybody. Mike McHugh, the library director, now in my 28th year.
You sound so much better than last time.
Yes, thank you. That was a full week of, it was bliss for them next door, and especially at home, to not hear my dulcet tones. I'm just going to be very brief here, given the hour, and just address some of the themes I heard, rather than any comprehensive package. People. We reduced the library staff by one full-time person in the middle of last year. The person retired. We decided to promote internally 2 other people to take on additional responsibility. That resulted in substantial savings, so our people budget for this year is actually lower than it was last year, despite having a labor agreement in place that required increases on January 1st. I currently have 2 vacancies starting out every single day. One is the result of litigation. I think you're aware of it. I'm being, I'm the suer. We hope that position, while it's unfilled, we have the budget there, so we're using part-time hourly people to help us get through. That was particularly helpful during December, and it's making me think hard about, once the matter is resolved, whether we need to fill the position. We also have a person out currently on long-term illness. We're working very close with Mr. Kaczynski. This person is a 37-year employee who has 400 days in her sick leave bank. It appears that she will never be able to return to work. So we need to get that resolved, because we can't carry her for 2.5 years, count her and pay her. That's going to have an ongoing serious impact on our operation. So 2 people down. I probably would only fill, if I had to today, one of those 2 people. So the situation ethics would come to bear, and it's in light of the changes that we see in our operation. I've talked to you about how we switched software in consort with the other 74 libraries in Buckles a year ago December. It's had some profound impacts on the internal operations of the library. I won't go into the details, but the machine has taken over more of the routine tasks, so I don't need as many people as I did. People are clicking away from home, so we don't see as many customers in-house anymore. I'd love to have 15 more parking spaces out front, but that is also having a negative impact. But because they're clicking away from home, on their computer, on their laptop, on their tablet, we're doing a lot more picking and packing. That's just an accelerating trend, and I'm hearing it from my colleagues in the other libraries. We gave back a little money to the community last year. We eliminated the 25-cent fee when you reserved an item and you came to pick it up. We did away with that as an experiment over the summer and continued it after Labor Day when it seemed to have met with favor among the people coming in to obtain such items. It's a trickle, but hopefully you can have a lot of trickles and suddenly you got a stream going. Just a couple of more points. I would stress how important it is to the library world that we have this long history now of cooperation with 75 other communities in the computer system and the reciprocal borrowing agreement that is Buckles. We will, in another month, we will add Maplewood to our roster. And you say, well, Maplewood's so far away. What is the benefit? These days, with daily delivery service and with the computer visibility for all of the holdings that Maplewood has, they're 2 business days away from having anything Maplewood owns be brought to Teaneck. So it's been a great value. I'll harken back to the fact that we did change software, and I am on a newly named reciprocity task force. This is made up mostly of libraries that are in danger of being overrun by non-residents. I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't want to provide far more service to non-residents than to Teaneck residents. And this is going on in some other towns. And believe me, I will be a loud and forceful voice to make sure that the fact that we're open year-round on Sundays, that we offer the longest schedule of any library in Bergen County, the fact that we have a good collection and professionally managed one, and provide reference service every time every hour that we're open, not be taken advantage of by some of the surrounding communities.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. One of them is I travel in Bergen County quite a bit, and there's no other library around that's open all the time. I'm not sure how you do that, but I'd like to compliment you for being able to do it with 2 less staff members. You might want to tell us how we can do that with 2 less staff members. We can do that across the board. We save a whole lot of money.
Are there any union members present? There would be some unhappiness on their ranks. There was a real strain in December, what with people using up time, accrued time. But by bringing in judiciously some part-time hourly help to fill in around the margins of the schedule, we've been able to maintain services.
Thanks, Wayne. Ellie?
Do you have a bad debt or uncollected debt? And have we ever explored how to maybe try to profit from it?
Well, our stick that we beat you over the head with is that your card can no longer be used.
No, I know. I mean...
And we do link families, so it's not that you can start at this end and start using the card of the next one and the next one. We're linked. So,
but do we have like I asked the same question to the court if we had bad debt or uncollected, just to get an idea of how much is out there. The building department, we asked the same question, and they told us that the number was pretty significant, but they have trouble as far as the powers that are in place to enforce it and collect. But I was just curious, in your file, do you have what we have a...
If someone gets very serious, Mr. Katz, $200, $300, $400 worth of material, especially if we're on the verge of having to pay another town, because under the Buckles agreement, if the items are overdue 6 months, I'm obligated to pay the other library the replacement costs. I've turned to Chief Wilson, and he's turned over Sergeant Lopez, who makes a phone call, and that has been very successful.
So your answer is that your bad debt's very, very low to nothing.
Yes.
All right, that's good.
It's out there. There's quite a few people whose privileges have been suspended,
right?
And that includes internet use,
right,
in the library. So,
all right, just another thing, I guess, to commend you about. Something that we don't see.
We try.
Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Good night.
Good night. Next item, council budget.
We have a budget.
We have a budget.
It's on page 20. And in this budget, in preparing the budget is really, very similar to last year. 219, we have for the any seminars the council would go to, any training. We also have the New Jersey League of Municipalities Conference, which is a very, very beneficial conference to attend, and some council members took advantage of that. We have special projects, discretionary funding for TCT. That's Teaneck Comes Together. They do a series of events over the year. That's under Special Projects 221. It's on page 21. They do a lot of special events for teens and populations not served.
And we've been doing that since 2006, correct?
I don't think it's 2006.
2007?
At least, probably 9 at least. I thought it was 9, but we've been doing it for several years. Several years we've been doing it.
Do you think TCT came out when, 2007 or 2006?
Actually, 2006, because there was, as a result of the shooting that happened on July 1st.
Okay, so we're all in favor of keeping that line item there, correct?
So we also have Let's Move initiative that we've entered into with school officials, and it's $1,500 that will help us.
I just want to speed things up along, because I don't think anybody's going to do anything with this one, right?
Website. Okay, so everything's the same, just the $1,500 for Let's Move.
Okay.
Then you have, what's the next one?
Next one is your
manager's budget. I'm sorry.
Page 1.
Page 1, all right.
Page 1, tab 5.
Okay, this budget's down $6,000. You have stationery and supplies, petty cash, office equipment, professional affiliations, strategic plan. I'm reading off of page 1. Strategic planning, public information. We usually get the calendar out of that. Training, $14,100 for training for all employees, and the computer software. What's that? That is account 251. I think there's more on that. 251. 252. I'm sorry. The inventory control system. We paid for that this year. We had paid for that out of 2013, where someone's coming in to tag everything. Fees for joint power purchase. I'm still working with the Northern New Jersey Community Foundation. That solar project is moving along. We're almost ready to get all of our roofs inspected to see how much space we'll have. We have several towns involved in that project. So the manager's budget, the manager's operating budget would be down $6,000 or 9.8%.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, next item is the clerk's budget. Can I read them? Township clerk's budget.
Page 22.
Page 22.
And I'll just run through it really quick. Under other expenses, there are no changes from last year regarding stationery and supplies, petty cash, office equipment, professional affiliations and travel, special projects, election expenses is the only thing that's going to be changing along with the clerk software. Election expenses is going to be increased by $60,500 as an allotment for the municipal election, and the clerk software is down as a result of council getting tablets this year, so that decreased by $4,800. And appraisals, statutory and advisory boards, code maintenance, and equipment is all staying the same. Then if you go on to page 23, parking decals, development regulations books, computer supplies, minute books, street and zoning maps, liquor license renewal applications, office supplies, that is all done in the same council meeting refreshments, and the recording system maintenance contract with FTR Gold.
Jamie, we're just going through the election expenses.
Yep.
What percentage of that 60,000 additional were we reimbursed?
For the last special general and the last special primary, they only reimbursed me the cost for staff overtime.
So do we know what the... I thought that one election... I thought...
Right. So the state was paying for the $25 million.
Yeah.
Two special.
You guys got bamboozled.
But this one is for our municipal election.
What?
The additional cost here is for our municipal election.
No, for last...
No, I'm saying for this year.
The Senate election.
No, you want to know what we got reimbursed for the special election?
Right, but I was just saying the
No, I know,
additional
but for
cost for this year is our election.
When we got the forms, the criteria seemed a little bit...
Can you speak into the mic?
Okay. When we received the forms from the Board of Elections, the criteria was
Is your mic on?
very fine line as far as what we could get reimbursed for from the state and what couldn't.
So we really weren't...
The practical item that would fit our description of without having to jump through hoops was the overtime. And then
The overtime or the staff?
the staff, which is overtime after 5,
Right.
5:15 or something.
And all the poll
whatever
workers.
scheduled, yeah.
The poll workers, yes. And
Yes.
Poll workers.
Machines?
We didn't have to pay for. I believe those were all expenses of the state. But any expenses we incurred, whether it was for their overtime or anything that,
Current staff employees.
Right.
That you're saying. So if you overtime, yes. The poll workers, no.
No, the poll workers are paid for by the, I think the state reimbursement.
And that was the state number that the state's doing. Okay. So $60,000 was the full election.
That should have been with the state and not from that did not come from us. But we did have to pay additional expenses like for staff and things like that to have an additional election.
So this year, we're now taking it up a notch. Anticipation of we've got
Every year, your
Right.
budget's going to dramatically
Because the
change
munis-
about $30,000
Right.
because of the municipal election because we have to find all the costs.
Understood. Okay.
On page 24.
But we still lose because, don't we reduce it because we pushed the Board of Ed?
Well, the Board of Education was moved to November.
So we should see some.
So should it have been a reduction?
But we don't pay out for the Board of Education. That's at their cost.
They pay
So-
you?
No, they pay for their own. We have primary expenses that we have to pay for, and we have municipal.
I'm sorry, I'm
Can I
confused.
give you a breakdown?
In April, we used to have a school board election.
Yeah, but that's not on our, that's out of their budget.
Can you speak in the mic, please?
No, but
Sorry, that's out of their budget.
But
We're not
who pays you? You see out of the budget, but you're here. They pay you?
Okay, so for primary, I'll give you an example. Primary election, for sample ballots, mailing, postage, and troubleshooter costs, it's approximately $35,000 for the primary. Out of expenses.
Jamie, that's not what he's asking.
He's saying for the Board of Election.
No, for the Board of Education.
Board of Education.
Do they pay you? That's all. They send you a check?
No, they pay for their own costs. We don't
No,
have
but you work the Board of Ed election, like I've seen you and some of your staff here counting numbers. Who's paying you? That's overtime.
Right. Those costs get reimbursed, but for their costs to have their
So
election.
you're saying the Board of Ed pays?
That's all he's asking.
Yeah.
They send you a check.
Sorry, I thought he wanted.
They send you a check, that's all, right? Okay. Thank you. That's all I'm asking.
Question. I know this is a revolutionary question. If the council election was in November, would we save some money?
Yes,
$60,000.
I don't know why nobody has kind of pushed that idea. Let's put them all in November.
You lose a lot of people.
You could have a big history lesson about the nonpartisan form of government and not being, So it's such a...
Board of Ed is in November, that's not part.
Yeah, how's that?
I mean, you really want, it's not that. I mean, Board of Ed elections moved to November, so nobody could vote on their budgets anymore if it's under 2%. That's all.
That's it. We're just about done, right?
Yep, we're done. Anybody else have anything to add? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
When's our next meeting?
Tuesday. All in favor?
Any opposed?
Easter.
It's good to see the world. show up even though we didn't expect you. Change things. We get bonuses every now and again. Tonight's bonus. It's like a lottery. Huh?